The worst thing about being called worthless in a room full of powerful alphas was realizing nobody sounded surprised. Evan Brooks stood at the far end of the Blackwell Genetics conference table with a stack of quarterly compliance folders pressed to his chest, trying very hard not to look like a man whose entire nervous system had just filed for resignation. The room was all glass, chrome, and quiet cruelty, 52 floors above downtown Chicago, where the city looked small enough to step on and everyone inside seemed rich enough to try. Evan had been summoned because someone from records had misplaced a file, and apparently when anything went wrong in a building this expensive, the safest solution was to blame the beta with the cheapest shoes. Grant Whitaker leaned back in his leather chair and smiled like he had been waiting all morning to ruin someone's life before lunch. Honestly, I don't know why he's still here, Grant said, loud enough for the department heads to hear, soft enough to pretend it was professional. No scent, no presence, no useful classification. He's basically office furniture with anxiety. A few people laughed. Not loudly. That would have required courage. They gave the kind of polite little laughs people used when they wanted to stay employed. Evan lowered his eyes to the folders and told himself not to react. Reacting was for people with options. Betas like him got one luxury in life, and that was becoming invisible before anyone decided invisibility was also a problem. Then the doors opened. Adrian Blackwell entered without hurry, and the room changed temperature. That was not poetic exaggeration. Evan was almost sure the air conditioning developed manners when Adrian walked in. Tall, pale, immaculate in a black suit that probably cost more than Evan's used Honda. The CEO of Blackwell Genetics moved to the head of the table with the calm precision of a man who had never once apologized to a revolving door for bumping into it. He was an alpha in the way storms were weather. Unavoidable. Quiet until they were not. His silver blonde hair was combed back. His gray eyes were sharp enough to edit a person's will to live, and his cedar cold scent was so tightly controlled Evan barely felt it at all. Which was fine. Great, actually. Evan did not need to notice his boss. Not his jaw, not his hands, not the terrifying elegance of a man who looked like he had been designed by a luxury watch company with abandonment issues. Adrian glanced at the scattered reports, then at Evan. You lost the Mercer file. Evan swallowed. No, sir. I found it misfiled under archived clinical contracts. I brought the corrected copies. Grant clicked his tongue. After delaying the entire meeting. Evan wanted to say the meeting had been delayed because Grant had requested the wrong file code 3 times, but self-preservation placed a gentle hand over his mouth and whispered, absolutely not, champ. Adrian opened one folder, scanned the page, and looked up with no expression at all. A records clerk who causes this much disruption has no place in a precision company. The sentence landed cleanly. No shouting. No drama. Just a blade made of corporate policy. Evan's fingers tightened around the remaining folders. Understood, Mr. Blackwell. His voice did not break, which felt like winning a very sad trophy. He bent to gather the papers that had slipped from his arms, because apparently humiliation was not complete unless performed near Italian marble. One page slid beneath Grant's chair. Another kissed the toe of Adrian's polished shoe. Then something small and white dropped from Evan's jacket pocket, bounced once against the floor, and rolled across the silent room. Evan froze. The pill stopped beside Adrian Blackwell's heel. For the first time all morning, the cruel alpha boss stopped looking bored. He reached down, picked it up between 2 fingers, and stared at the tiny red label as if it had just confessed to murder. Evan's stomach fell through all 52 floors. Adrian's eyes lifted to him, colder now, but underneath the cold was something Evan had never seen there before. Alarm. Evan Brooks, Adrian said quietly. My office. Now. Adrian Blackwell did not walk to his office so much as conduct Evan there through sheer atmospheric pressure. Evan followed 3 steps behind him down the executive corridor, clutching the empty space where his folders used to be and trying not to panic in a way that could be seen by cameras, assistants, department heads, or God, who was apparently also on Blackwell Genetics' payroll. The hallway was too quiet. The carpet swallowed every footstep. The glass walls reflected Evan from every angle, pale face, messy brown hair, cheap navy blazer, and the expression of a man wondering whether he could legally fake food poisoning to escape a meeting with his own termination notice. Adrian said nothing. That was worse than shouting. Shouting had edges. Silence had teeth. When they reached the corner office, Adrian opened the door with a palm scan and stepped aside. Evan entered because survival sometimes looked exactly like walking into a trap while pretending it was a calendar invite. The office was enormous, all dark wood, city views, and expensive minimalism. No family photos. No clutter. No evidence that Adrian Blackwell had ever experienced a hobby, a snack, or a human emotion without first reviewing it for efficiency. The door sealed behind them with a soft click that made Evan's shoulders jump. Adrian moved to his desk and placed the little white pill beneath a thin strip of examination light. The red label glowed under it, half peeled, half smudged, embarrassingly homemade. Evan wanted to snatch it back. He also wanted to dissolve into the floor and become a cautionary stain. "Where did you get this?" Adrian asked. His voice was quiet. Evan hated quiet. Quiet meant the explosion had manners. "It is a supplement." Adrian looked at him. "Try again." Evan folded his hands in front of him to hide the trembling. "A doctor prescribed it when I was younger. It helps with hormone balance. Beta, irregularity. It is not a company concern. This is not a beta supplement." The words were so flat they almost sounded gentle. Evan's breath caught anyway. Adrian opened a drawer, removed a sleek black scanner, and passed the pill beneath it. The device chirped once. His jaw tightened. It was a small movement. Terrifying, honestly. Evan had seen less tension in disaster movies 5 minutes before the bridge collapsed. "Military grade. Suppressor compound," Adrian said. "Obsolete formula. Illegal for civilian use in every state, including Illinois." Evan blinked. The room tilted a little, which seemed rude because he was already having a difficult afternoon. "That is impossible." "No," Adrian lifted his eyes. "What is impossible is a beta needing an omega suppressor strong enough to mute a biological signature for years." Evan laughed once, because apparently his body had chosen denial with jazz hands. "I think there is a misunderstanding. I am not an omega. I was tested when I was 12. Then again at 16. The clinic said I was a beta. A weak one, technically, which was a charming little detail they delivered with the emotional warmth of a parking ticket." Adrian did not smile. "What clinic?" "Northlake Classification Center." The change in Adrian's expression was almost nothing. A flicker, a shadow crossing ice. But Evan saw it, and his stomach tightened. "That facility was shut down 7 years ago," Adrian said. Evan's mouth went dry. "For what?" Adrian looked back at the pill instead of answering immediately. That was the moment Evan understood something was wrong in a deeper, colder way than public humiliation or unemployment. Adrian Blackwell, who had just called him disruptive in front of half the executive board, was not looking at him like an inconvenience anymore. He was looking at him like evidence. "Evan," Adrian said, and somehow his first name sounded more dangerous than his last. "Who has been giving you these?" Evan thought of the mail-order refills that arrived every month in plain envelopes. The old clinic number that still worked if he pressed extension 9. The nurse who always told him not to skip a dose because his body was unstable, because betas like him needed help staying normal, because nobody wanted him to become a problem. His fingers went cold. "I have taken them since I was a kid," he whispered. Adrian's hand closed around the edge of the desk. Not hard enough to break anything, just enough for Evan to notice. "You are not in trouble for lying to me." Evan stared at him. "Then why do you look like that?" Adrian's gaze lifted, sharp and furious, but the fury was not aimed at Evan. That somehow made it worse. "Because someone has been poisoning you for 12 years. Evan did the very normal thing a person did after being told his childhood medication might have been illegal poison. He stared at the most expensive desk he had ever seen and wondered whether it would be rude to pass out on it. Adrian Blackwell was already moving, opening a secure cabinet behind his office wall, pulling out a sealed medical kit, and typing something into a private console with the speed of a man who had emergencies alphabetized. Evan backed toward the door. "I should go," he said, which was hilarious because his legs had the confidence of overcooked pasta. Adrian did not look away from the screen. "You are not leaving this office until I know what that compound is doing to your system." "That sounds illegal." "So does your medication." "Fair. Annoying, but fair." Evan hated when terrifying people had points. The air system above them hummed, then clicked twice. A small amber light flashed near the ceiling. Adrian looked up immediately. Evan did not like that. Adrian Blackwell noticed things the way hawks noticed field mice, and right now the hawk looked concerned about the weather indoors. Do you feel warm? Adrian asked. Evan almost laughed again. I feel unemployed, possibly poisoned, and emotionally laminated, but sure, warm can join the party. Then his skin prickled. Not painfully, not dramatically, just a strange soft fizz beneath his collar, like static gathering under his bones. He rubbed his wrist, frowning. Actually, that is new. Adrian stepped around the desk. Sit down. I am capable of standing. Evan. One word. Calm. Absolute. Unfortunately, his knees heard it and resigned. Evan sank onto the edge of the leather couch near the window, annoyed with his body for accepting orders from upper management. The city stretched behind Adrian in silver and blue, Lake Michigan flashing in the distance like a cold sheet of glass. For one ridiculous second, Evan thought this would make a beautiful last view before his life became a medical documentary with terrible lighting. The amber light turned red. A mechanical voice announced, air filtration imbalance. Please wait for automatic reset. Adrian went still. Evan felt it then. A shift in the room. Not temperature exactly. More like the air had remembered something about him that he had spent his whole life forgetting. A faint scent rose from his own skin, so delicate he thought he imagined it at first. Clean snow. White pear. Something tender and green, like the first breath of spring hiding under frost. Evan clapped a hand over his wrist as if he could shove it back inside. No, he whispered. Adrian took one step closer, then stopped so suddenly it looked painful. His expression did not change, but his pupils widened, and the controlled cedar scent around him sharpened into something colder, steadier, protective without becoming overwhelming. His hand curled at his side. Not reaching, holding back. That scared Evan more than if he had shouted. What is happening to me? Evan asked. His voice came out smaller than he wanted. Adrian crossed the room, but he kept a careful 6 feet between them, as if the distance mattered more than his instincts. The suppressor is failing. I do not have anything to suppress. Adrian looked at him then, and there was no cruelty in his face, only a hard, furious certainty that made Evan forget how to breathe. Yes, you do. The office doors gave a soft electronic chirp as someone tried to access them from outside. Then another chirp. Then another. Adrian turned his head toward the sound, eyes narrowing. Beyond the glass wall, shadows gathered in the executive corridor. People had smelled it. Evan pressed himself back against the couch, heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear the air system struggling overhead. Adrian removed his suit jacket and placed it over Evan's shoulders without touching him, blocking the scent as much as he could. His voice dropped into something quiet and immovable. Listen to me carefully. You are not a beta, Evan. You are something they will try to take if they know. Evan gripped the edges of the jacket, shaking. And what are you going to do? Adrian looked toward the locked door, and for the first time, Evan saw the cruel alpha boss direct that cruelty away from him. Keep them outside. For 3 seconds, Evan thought Adrian Blackwell had finally lost his mind, which was impressive because Evan had assumed the man kept his mind in a temperature-controlled vault with the company passwords. The office door chimed again. Access denied. Then again. Access denied. Then the intercom blinked with a call from executive security, followed by a message from Grant Whitaker, followed by 5 more names Evan recognized from the conference room. His stomach turned. They were not checking on him. They were not worried that the records clerk with the unfortunate shoes had collapsed in the CEO office. They had smelled something impossible, and curiosity had put on a business suit. Adrian walked to the control panel beside the door and entered a lockdown sequence with terrifying calm. Seal Executive Level 52. Restrict Alpha Access. Medical Privacy Protocol Blackwell 1. A smooth artificial voice answered. Protocol requires confirmation. Adrian placed his hand against the scanner. Confirmed. The glass walls frosted instantly, turning the Chicago skyline into a pale blur. The room became smaller. Quieter. Safer, maybe, although Evan was not ready to give it that much credit. He stood too quickly, Adrian's jacket slipping from one shoulder. You cannot just lock me in your office. Adrian turned around. I locked them out. That is the kind of sentence kidnappers probably think sounds reasonable. Sit down. Stop telling me to sit down. Then stop looking like you are about to fall through my floor. Evan opened his mouth, discovered he had no comeback prepared, and hated both of them for it. His skin still buzzed faintly, and that soft parent snow scent kept drifting up from his wrists no matter how tightly he pressed them against his sleeves. It felt private. Worse, it felt honest. His whole life, Evan had been told he was blank, muted, biologically unimpressive. Now his own body was giving a speech in a language everyone else seemed to understand before he did. Outside the frosted glass, shapes moved in the corridor. Someone knocked. Not polite. Not friendly. Adrian's face went still. He crossed to the door but did not open it fully. Instead, he lowered the security screen, leaving a narrow speaker channel. Grant's voice slipped through, bright and eager. Adrian, we need to discuss what is in there. Evan flinched at in there, like he had become a spilled chemical or a rare animal under glass. Adrian's reply was quiet enough to be polite and cold enough to freeze payroll. There is an employee receiving private medical assistance. That scent is not medical. Your interest in it is inappropriate. A pause. Grant laughed softly. Come on. If Brooks is what I think he is, this is company property under genetic disclosure clauses. Evan's fingers curled into the fabric of Adrian's jacket. Company property. 2 words, and suddenly every humiliating laugh in the conference room felt almost kind by comparison. Adrian opened the door 1 inch wider, just enough for his presence to fill the gap without letting anything else in. His controlled cedar scent sharpened, not overwhelming Evan, but pushing outward like a locked gate. Say that about him again, Adrian said, and your badge will stop working before you reach the elevator. Silence. Beautiful, stunned silence. Evan should have felt grateful. Instead, panic twisted into anger because Adrian was still deciding things. Lockdown. Protocols. Medical privacy. Evan's life had become a boardroom emergency, and the man protecting him was also the man who had humiliated him 10 minutes ago. When Adrian shut the door, Evan stood, clutching the jacket around himself like armor he resented needing. Do you feel better now? He asked, voice shaking. You scared them. Congratulations. Very on brand. Adrian looked back at him. They would have requested a classification hold within the hour. And you did what? Claimed me first. The words came out sharper than Evan meant them to. Adrian's expression changed, just barely. Not hurt. Not exactly. More like something in him stepped back behind a wall. No, he said. I protected your right to refuse one. Evan stared at him, breathing hard. The office felt too quiet again. Then Adrian removed his phone, made 1 call, and said, Send Dr. Melissa Hart to my private office now. No. Assistance. No records team. No board notification. Evan sank slowly back onto the couch, exhausted and furious and afraid of how badly he wanted to believe him. Adrian stayed near the door, 6 feet away, hands visible, voice controlled. I will not touch you. I will not classify you. I will not let them reduce you to a file. Evan swallowed, eyes burning though he refused to cry in front of a man whose furniture probably cost more than therapy. Then what am I supposed to do? Adrian looked toward the frosted glass, where the shadows had finally stopped moving. For the next 10 minutes, he said, hate me if you need to. Just do it from behind a locked door. Dr. Melissa Hart arrived 7 minutes later with a medical bag in one hand, a tablet in the other, and the expression of a woman who had seen enough executive disasters to stop being impressed by expensive panic. She was in her early 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a low bun, warm brown eyes, and a cardigan that looked aggressively normal inside Adrian Blackwell's glass and steel kingdom. Evan liked her immediately, which made him suspicious. Trusting adults with medical equipment had not worked out great for him historically. Adrian opened the door only after confirming her identity through 3 security checks, 2 access codes, and what Evan assumed was a secret handshake performed by billionaires and emotionally unavailable people. Melissa stepped inside, paused, and looked at Evan with careful softness. Not hunger, not shock, not interest dressed up as concern, just concern. Evan nearly hated her for how much that mattered. Mr. Brooks, she said, I am Dr. Hart. I work independently from Blackwell Genetics. Nothing we discuss leaves this room without your consent, unless your life is in immediate danger. Is that clear? Evan blinked. Consent. The word landed strangely, like a chair offered in a room where he had expected a cage. That is clear, he said, then added because fear made him stupidly polite. Thank you. Melissa's mouth twitched. You are welcome. May I sit near you? Evan nodded. Adrian remained by the frosted glass wall, arms folded, watching the corridor shadows like a guard dog with a tax bracket. Melissa took Evan's pulse, scanned his temperature, checked the little white pill, and asked him questions in a calm voice. How long had he taken the medication? Who prescribed it? Did he ever experience fainting, scent headaches, unexplained chills, or emotional crashes after missing a dose? Evan answered, and with every answer Melissa's face grew quieter. Not colder, quieter. The way people got when they were trying not to say something terrible too soon. Finally, she set the tablet on the coffee table. Evan, your classification records are false. The room did not spin this time. It simply stopped. No, Evan said automatically, because apparently his brain had one button and it was labeled denial. I am a beta. Melissa shook her head gently. You were registered as one. That is different. Evan looked toward Adrian despite himself. He hated that. He hated needing to see whether the alpha believed it. Adrian's face was unreadable, but his hand had tightened around his own wrist, as if he was physically holding himself back from interrupting. Melissa continued. Your scent glands were chemically suppressed before full presentation. Your endocrine markers are consistent with an omega profile, but not a standard one. Based on the reaction pattern, you may be what older classification models called a true omega. Evan laughed once. It came out thin and terrible. That sounds like something from a bad romance paperback sold at airport bookstores. Melissa did not smile. It is rare but real. It means your body produces a very distinct regulatory scent. Powerful alphas can respond to it strongly. More importantly, after years of suppression, your system is unstable. Your first unsuppressed heat cycle could be dangerous without monitored care. Adrian's head lifted sharply. How dangerous? Evan flinched at the question, not because Adrian's voice was loud, but because it was not cruel anymore. It was stripped down to fear. Melissa looked at him, then back to Evan, making it clear whose body they were discussing. With medical support, manageable. Without it, fever, dehydration, collapse, and neurological stress. He needs a controlled environment, hydration, blockers that are legal and safe, and a stabilizing scent nearby if his body chooses one. Evan rubbed his palms against his pants. Chooses one. Fantastic. My body gets a vote now. Very democratic of it after 24 years of ghosting me. Melissa's eyes softened. Evan. He looked down. The joke had nowhere to go. What if I do not want this? He whispered. What if I want to go back to being nothing? The words slipped out before he could make them prettier. Nothing. Blank. Worthless. The labels fit too easily because he had worn them so long they had left marks. Adrian stepped forward one pace, then stopped. You were never nothing. Evan looked at him, anger rising fast because softness from Adrian felt like standing too close to a fire alarm. Do not do that. Do what? Act like you did not call me useless in front of 12 people this morning. Adrian went still. Melissa quietly looked at her tablet, pretending not to exist with professional excellence. Evan's throat tightened. You do not get to discover I am rare and suddenly decide I matter. Adrian's face did not change, but something behind his eyes did. Something old. Something ashamed. You are right, he said. Evan had been prepared for defense. Denial. Executive-level emotional gymnastics. Not agreement. It knocked him off balance. Melissa cleared her throat gently. There is one more thing. The strongest stabilizing scent in the room is Mr. Blackwell's. Your vitals improved whenever he moved closer, even before I arrived. Evan stared at the doctor, then at Adrian, then at the traitorous pulse monitor on her tablet, which had apparently decided to expose him with charts. I would like to file a complaint against my own biology, Evan muttered. No one laughed, but Melissa's mouth softened. Adrian looked away first, jaw tight. For the first time since Evan had known him, the cruelest alpha in Chicago seemed genuinely afraid of being wanted for the wrong reason. Melissa packed the illegal pill into an evidence tube. We need to move you somewhere secure before the board realizes what these readings mean. Evan hugged Adrian's jacket, tighter around himself. And where exactly am I supposed to go? Adrian looked back at him, voice low and careful. Somewhere no one can reach you unless you invite them in. Evan should have said no. He should have thrown the jacket at Adrian's perfect face and marched out with whatever dignity survived the day. Instead, the scent of cedar and winter steadied the shaking in his hands, and that scared him most of all. By the time Adrian Blackwell's private elevator opened into the penthouse above River North, Evan had decided there were at least 6 different kinds of silence, and the one between them was absolutely the worst. It was not peaceful silence. It was not even awkward silence, which Evan could have handled with enough sarcasm and internal screaming. This silence had medical paperwork, security protocols, and one terrifyingly handsome alpha standing 3 feet away, as if proximity itself needed a legal waiver. Dr. Hart had followed them up with 2 sealed cases of equipment, a calm expression, and the kind of sensible shoes that suggested she had survived many dramatic people in expensive buildings. The penthouse did not look like a home. It looked like a magazine spread titled "What If Loneliness Had Marble Countertops." Floor-to-ceiling windows showed Chicago glittering below, the river cutting through the city like a black ribbon, headlights crawling along the streets 50 stories down. Everything was spotless. Dark wood, pale stone, a fireplace that probably did not know how to be cozy without written instructions. Evan stood in the entryway wearing Adrian's jacket over his shoulders and his own disbelief across his face. "Do you live here?" he asked. "Or does the apartment simply tolerate your presence for tax reasons?" Adrian paused just long enough for Evan to realize he had said that out loud. Fantastic. Perfect. Excellent way to address the man whose scent was apparently keeping his nervous system from launching itself into Lake Michigan. "I live here," Adrian said. "Barely," Dr. Hart murmured, walking past them. Evan liked her more every minute. Adrian led them to a room at the end of the hall, and this one was different from the rest of the penthouse. Warmer, softer, cream-colored walls, a low bed with white blankets, a small refrigerator stocked with electrolyte drinks, a humidifier, medical monitors, and blackout curtains half drawn against the city lights. There were no locks on the inside of the door. Evan noticed because his brain was making a list of exits, threats, and emotionally confusing furniture. Adrian noticed him noticing. "The door opens from your side at all times," he said. "Security can only enter if you authorize it or Dr. Hart declares an emergency." Evan tightened his grip on the jacket. "And you?" Adrian looked at him directly. "Only if you ask me to." That should not have hit as hard as it did. Evan hated that his chest reacted before his pride could file an objection. Dr. Hart checked his temperature, clipped a pulse monitor to his finger, and made him drink something lemon-flavored and aggressively healthy. "Your body is still adjusting," she said. "You may feel chilled, warm, dizzy, emotional, irritated, or unusually tired." Evan stared at her. "So, a regular Tuesday with better lighting." Adrian turned slightly toward the window, but Evan caught the smallest movement at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. More like a smile had submitted a request and been denied by management. Then the room shifted again. Evan's scent rose, faint but nervous, and the monitor betrayed him with a faster beep. Adrian immediately stepped back. Too fast. Like he was afraid of himself. Like Evan was not the only one trapped inside a body with terrible timing. Dr. Hart studied the readings, then looked between them. "Mr. Blackwell, sit in the chair by the wall. No closer. Evan, you do not need contact. His scent at a distance should be enough for now." Evan's face burned. "Great. Wonderful. My treatment plan is sitting near my boss like a haunted aromatherapy candle." Adrian moved to the chair without comment, removed his cuff links, rolled his sleeves to his forearms, and rested one wrist on the armrest. The cedar in winter scent eased into the room, controlled and steady, not claiming space so much as making space. Evan hated how quickly his breathing softened. He hated the relief. He hated most of all that Adrian did not look pleased by it. He looked careful, almost sad. "You can sleep," Adrian said quietly. "I will stay here until Dr. Hart says it is safe for me to leave." Evan lay back against the pillows, fighting exhaustion and the humiliating urge to trust him. "You do not have to act noble," he whispered. "I am not." Adrian's gaze stayed on the floor between them. "I am trying to be useful." The words were plain, almost cold, but they slipped under Evan's defenses anyway. Outside, Chicago moved on like nothing had happened. Inside, the cruel alpha sat 6 feet away in perfect stillness, offering nothing but distance, patience, and the one scent Evan's frightened body recognized as safe. Evan fell asleep with his hand curled around the sleeve of Adrian's jacket, and for once, nobody tried to take anything from him. Evan woke to the sound of rain tapping against glass and the strange, humiliating realization that he had slept better in Adrian Blackwell's penthouse than he had slept in his own apartment in years. This felt deeply unfair. His apartment had a thrift store lamp, a microwave that screamed, and exactly one blanket that did not smell like cedar, winter, and emotional confusion. The penthouse had medical monitors, blackout curtains, and a cruel alpha sitting 6 feet away in a chair like a professionally repressed guardian angel. Adrian was still there when Evan opened his eyes. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his silver blonde hair was slightly undone, and his gaze was fixed on a tablet with the intensity of a man trying to win an argument against the universe. Dr. Hart was gone, leaving a note that said Evan's vitals were stable and he should keep drinking fluids. Evan stared at the note. "I have been diagnosed with soup instructions," he muttered. Adrian looked up. "Good morning. Do not say that like we are normal people." Adrian set the tablet down. "Fair." For a moment, the room almost softened. Almost. Then Adrian's phone vibrated on the side table, and whatever fragile quiet had settled between them shattered. He read the message once. Then again. His face went blank in a way Evan was beginning to understand meant something had gone very wrong. "What?" Evan asked, sitting up too quickly. The monitor beeped in protest, a tiny electronic snitch. Adrian stood. "Grant access sealed archive material from the old Northlake files." Evan's mouth went dry. "The clinic." Adrian did not answer fast enough. That was answer enough. What did he find? Adrian looked toward the rain-streaked window. "My father's signature." The words landed without sound, and somehow that made them worse. Evan stared at him, waiting for the explanation that would make the room stop feeling like it had tilted sideways. Adrian's father. Blackwell money. Northlake Classification Center. The pills. The years of being told he was broken in the exact tone adults used when they wanted children to stop asking questions. Evan pushed the blanket off his legs. "No," Adrian turned back. "Evan, listen to me." "No, I am listening. I am doing a fantastic job listening. Your family paid for the place that erased me." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I did not know. That is supposed to help?" Evan stood, even though his knees immediately filed a complaint. "I have spent my entire life being told I was empty. I took those pills because people in white coats told me my body was a mistake that needed managing. And now I am standing in your very expensive safe room, finding out the cage had your last name engraved on it." Adrian stepped forward, then stopped himself. Always stopping. Always careful. Today, careful felt like another kind of control. "I am trying to fix this." Evan laughed, sharp and small. "Of course you are. You fix companies. You fix scandals. You fix broken little employees after your board notices they might be valuable. That is not what you are to me." The softness in Adrian's voice nearly broke him, which made Evan angrier. "You do not get to decide what I am." He grabbed his shoes, ignored Adrian calling his name, and walked out before his courage evaporated. Security tried to follow, but Evan moved through the private elevator, down through the lobby, and into the Chicago rain with Adrian's jacket still around his shoulders because apparently dignity had limits, and he was freezing. The city blurred around him, headlights smearing gold across wet pavement, cold water sliding down his hair and collar. By the time he reached the alley behind a closed coffee shop 2 blocks away, his breath had turned shaky. The parent snow scent rose from his skin again, frightened and thin, and this time there was no cedar nearby to steady it. Evan pressed a hand to the brick wall, dizzy. Footsteps slowed at the mouth of the alley. Then another set. Then another. Curious voices. Alpha voices. Evan's heart climbed into his throat as shadows gathered beneath the streetlights. Not touching, not moving close, but watching with the awful focus of people who had found something rare. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Adrian's name lit the screen. Evan wanted to ignore it. He wanted to hate him cleanly. Instead, he answered with rain on his face and fear in his chest. Adrian's voice came through low and controlled, but underneath it was panic with its tie still on. "Tell me where you are." Evan looked up as the shadows took one step nearer, and for the first time all day, he was too tired to pretend he was not afraid. The first thing Adrian Blackwell did when he found Evan was not shout or issue one of the commands that could silence an entire boardroom. He simply stopped at the entrance of the rain-soaked alley and raised both hands where Evan could see them. Somehow, that frightened Evan more than anger would have. Adrian looked painfully human instead of the monster Evan had prepared himself to hate. The nearby alphas instinctively stepped back as Adrian's calm cedar scent settled over the alley. One of them insisted they had discovered an unregistered Omega who needed to be taken in. Adrian answered without raising his voice. You found a person having a medical emergency. Then he shifted just enough to shield Evan behind him. He needs a doctor, privacy, and the right to decide who stands near him. His final word was simple. Leave. No one argued. They quietly disappeared into the rain, suddenly aware they had crossed someone powerful enough to make consequences arrive before sunrise. Once the alley emptied, Adrian still refused to invade Evan's space. I'm going to kneel now, he said. Evan blinked. Are you having some kind of billionaire breakdown? Possibly. Adrian lowered himself onto one knee on the wet pavement without reaching for him, bowing his head and exposing the vulnerable line of his throat, the ancient alpha gesture of restraint instead of dominance. I'm not here to take anything from you. Evan's voice trembled. Your father did. Adrian closed his eyes. Yes, I didn't know what he had done, but I inherited the empire that benefited from it. That makes it my responsibility to destroy it. Evan swallowed hard. What about me? Adrian met his eyes. You are not mine. You are not evidence, property, or my family's redemption. If you tell me to leave, I'll call Dr. Hart, wait across the street, and never come closer than you allow. For the first time in his life, someone offered Evan a choice. After a long silence, he reached out and caught Adrian's sleeve with two trembling fingers. Take me home. Not because I trust you, because I'm cold, and your doctor has the personality of a weighted blanket. Adrian almost smiled. By morning, the penthouse still looked immaculate, but it no longer felt empty. Evan woke beneath a warm blanket while Adrian slept upright in a chair 6 feet away, respecting every boundary. On the desk lay 3 documents that stole Evan's breath. Adrian's resignation as acting CEO, a sworn disclosure exposing Northlake Classification Center, and a federal complaint against Blackwell Genetics and his late father. What did you do? Evan whispered. What I should have done the moment I saw the pill, Adrian replied. He was prepared to surrender the company if the investigation found any trace of his involvement. It stopped being my company the day it learned to call people assets. He had already revoked every restriction surrounding Evan's records and instructed his lawyers to answer to Evan first. So what am I now? Evan asked quietly. Adrian's expression softened. Evan Brooks. Not property. Not a rare classification. Just someone I hurt, and someone I hope will one day let me earn the right to stand closer. Evan stepped forward, not into Adrian's arms. Not yet, but close enough to erase the distance between them. Some days I'm still going to hate you. Adrian nodded. I know, and I'm keeping your white sofa permanently nervous. A faint smile crossed Adrian's face. Evan looked at him for a long moment before saying the only words that truly mattered. But you can stay. Adrian received neither forgiveness nor ownership that morning. He was given something far more precious, the chance to begin again.